It began with the smell. Not smoke, something older, stranger, like iron struck by rain or the air right before lightning touches ground. The villagers of San Erasto said they smelled it long before they saw anything. The chapel stood alone on the edge of the plateau, built in 1791 by wandering monks who left no records of their origin. Its stone was darker than the local rock, flecked with mineral veins that caught light even under cloud. Inside, it was small, no more than 6 pews, a cracked altar, and a single wooden crucifix that seemed to absorb shadow instead of casting it. By 1938, it was already abandoned. The roof sagged inward, vines split the floor, and the bell had not rung in years. Only one man still cared for it, Father Salazar, an aging priest who came every Thursday to sweep the dust and whisper prayers to walls that no longer answered. On the morning of June 7th, the air changed. The villagers saw it first, the shimmer above the chapel, faint at sunrise, then brighter like heat rising from stone. Yet the air was cold, sharp enough to sting the lungs. At noon, the first child shouted, pointing toward the hill. The chapel glowed, not with flame, but with light that looked alive. The walls shone from within, their texture dissolving into molten gold. Yet no smoke rose, no crackle of burning wood. They ran up the hill with buckets, shovels, cloths. But when they reached the door, they stopped. The stone wasn't hot. The crucifix was untouched. Inside, everything pulsed faintly, as if the air itself had become ember. Salazar stood at the altar, eyes fixed on the walls. He wasn't praying. He was listening. When they called his name, he didn't turn. "Do you hear it?" he asked softly. No one answered. "It's singing." They thought it was fever. They tried to pull him away, but the air inside pressed against their skin like water. The light deepened, gold turning to white, white to something too bright to name. Someone screamed that it was burning, but the wood didn't blacken. The wax candles stayed whole. Even the cloth on the altar remained cool. It was light without heat, fire without fire. The villagers fled. When they looked back from the ridge, the chapel stood in perfect silence, wrapped in a halo that pulsed like breath. By sunset, the glow faded. The priest never came out. The next morning, they found him kneeling at the altar, his body intact, his clothes unburned, but his skin glowed faintly, as if lit from within. His eyes were open, his mouth curved in something between awe and grief. No one touched him. By nightfall, the glow in his body dimmed, leaving behind a faint scent, metallic, clean, like the air after rain. They buried him beside the chapel. The light never returned. But every Thursday, at the same hour he used to arrive, villagers reported seeing something on the hill. Not light, but a shadow shaped like a man kneeling, faintly luminous in the dark. Some said it was Salazar. Others said it was the chapel remembering him. And still others whispered that it was the light itself, waiting to be let in again. The officials from Quito arrived a week later, riding in a black truck covered in dust and indifference. They were sent to investigate reports of spontaneous combustion, religious hysteria, as the document phrased it. When they reached San Erasto, the villagers refused to go near the hill. They pointed instead, from a distance, toward the silhouette of the chapel, still standing against the pale sky like a burnt photograph. The men from the capital laughed. They climbed. At the entrance, the air felt strange, denser, cooler than the wind outside. It pressed against their ears like pressure beneath water. Inside, the walls were clean, too clean. Not one spiderweb, not one trace of soot. The stone had changed color. Darker now, almost black, yet it reflected light faintly, like the inside of a seashell. One of the officials ran his hand along the altar. The texture was smooth, polished, not stone anymore, not quite metal either. His palm came away dusted with a fine gray powder. "Limestone residue," he said, trying to sound confident. But his voice came back delayed, distorted, echoing a second too late, like someone else repeating him from behind the walls. The men froze. "You heard that?" one whispered. The echo replied, "You heard that?" Perfectly synchronized. No one spoke again. They recorded their findings, wrote, "Optical illusion caused by heat mirage," and left before nightfall. Yet one of them, Inspector Vega, couldn't stop thinking about the echo. It wasn't just repetition. There had been tone, intention, behind it, like imitation. 3 days later, he returned alone. He carried a portable phonograph recorder, a small brass crucifix, and a notebook. The climb took him longer this time. The air grew heavy the closer he got. When he entered the chapel, it was twilight. The light from his lantern spread weakly, absorbed by the walls. They didn't reflect. They seemed to drink it. He placed the recorder on the altar and wound the crank. The static filled the room, gentle at first, then denser, like sand pouring through air. "This is Inspector Rodrigo Vega," he said into the horn. "Test 1, interior acoustics." He paused. The playback needle spun in silence. Then, softly, from somewhere near the ceiling, "Rodrigo Vega." Not an echo, a reply. He looked up. The lantern flickered. The crucifix on the altar vibrated faintly, its metal trembling in rhythm with the voice. He swallowed, his mouth dry. "Who's there?" The air rippled. "Who's there? Stop copying me!" he shouted. Silence. Then, slowly, "Stop copying me." But the tone was wrong. It wasn't mockery. It was confusion, like something trying to understand. The walls began to pulse faintly with light, the same golden hue villagers had described. Vega stepped back. The floor under his boots felt warm now, almost alive, like breathing through stone. The recorder captured everything. "If you can understand me," he whispered. "What are you?" The answer came through static, too faint to be sure, but later analysis would identify 3 syllables. Not Spanish, not Latin, but close to both. "Ignis, sine, flamma." Fire without flame. Then, a deep sound rolled through the chapel. Not thunder, not wind. It was a sigh. Every candle, though unlit, bent slightly toward the altar as if pulled by invisible air. The inspector ran. The recorder kept spinning until the spring unwound. When villagers found it days later, the wax cylinder was warm, the grooves faintly glowing with dull orange light. The recording, when played back in Quito, contained 39 seconds of clear audio. Vega's breathing, his voice, the sound of stone shifting. Then, faintly, at the very end, "Do you hear it?" A second voice replied. "We remember the fire." The cylinder recording spread quietly through the universities of Quito. Professors passed it hand to hand. Students whispered about it in dormitories after midnight. And every time it was replayed, the same thing happened. The audio lengthened by a few seconds. Not just distortion or tape stretch. It grew. By the 5th playback, the ending had changed. After the phrase, "We remember the fire," there came a faint hum, deep and deliberate, like someone drawing breath through the walls. The scholars dismissed it as a mechanical error. But one, Professor Esteban del Campo, an expert in colonial architecture, insisted it was something more. He recognized the chapel's design from old monastic sketches stored in the National Archive. The materials used, basalt mixed with volcanic ash, were not local. The builders had transported them from the northern Andes, hundreds of kilometers away, for reasons never recorded. The drawings showed something else too, an underground chamber beneath the altar, marked only with a single Latin word, core, heart. Del Campo was fascinated. He assembled a team of 3 assistants and set out for San Erasto. They arrived at dusk. The villagers warned them not to stay past nightfall. They didn't listen. The professor set up a camp at the base of the hill and climbed with lanterns and measuring tools. The chapel greeted them in silence. Inside, the air felt metallic, dense, and faintly warm, as though it had never cooled after the last burning. When he placed his hand against the wall, the stone pulsed, softly, like a slow heartbeat. One of the assistants, Mateo, refused to go further. He said he could hear faint voices inside the stone, whispering in rhythm with the pulse. Del Campo pressed his ear to the altar. At first, nothing. Then a vibration, subtle but regular. "It's hollow," he said. He took a chisel, struck once. The echo returned not as a crack, but as a reply. A single tone, low, human. He froze. The others heard it too, a breath echoing through solid rock. They struck again. The tone repeated, slightly higher. A sequence formed. 3 low pulses, 2 short, 3 again. Mateo began to cry. "It's speaking," he whispered. "No," said the professor. "It's remembering." The third assistant, Lena, backed toward the door. "We shouldn't be here," she said. "The priest." But she stopped. Her lantern flickered. On the far wall, the stone began to glow. Faint lines forming patterns, spirals interlocking like veins of molten light. The glow spread toward the altar. Del Campo stepped back, shielding his eyes. The light wasn't heat. It didn't burn, but it felt alive, crawling across the floor like liquid sunlight. Then, from beneath the altar, came sound. Not a hum this time, but a voice, layered and resonant, like dozens speaking through the same mouth. "You opened it," Lena screamed. The lantern shattered. The light vanished. Silence returned, deep and perfect. When the villagers climbed the hill at dawn, they found the chapel empty. The tools lay scattered. The altar was cracked. And in the center of the floor, the stone had melted into a perfect circle, glassy and smooth, faintly reflecting the ceiling above, except the reflection was wrong. In it, 4 figures were kneeling. Only one lantern burned beside them. When the reflection faded, the circle remained warm for hours. No bodies were found. Weeks later, the recording cylinder began emitting sound even without a phonograph. At first, it was faint static. Then, gradually, a hum. The same pattern. 3, 2, 3. And within that rhythm, when amplified, another phrase emerged. Not in Spanish, but close enough to understand. The heart remembers its fire. For nearly half a century, the story of the burning chapel slipped into rumor. Half history, half superstition. San Erasto became a place whispered about but never visited. The villagers built a new church further down the valley and left the old one alone, letting moss claim the stones and silence swallow the rest. Until 1984. A government archaeological project, part of a survey to catalog colonial ruins across the Andes, listed Capilla de San Erasto among the sites requiring inspection. The directive was bureaucratic, indifferent. But the man assigned to the task, Dr. Gabriel Menendez, was not. He had read the original reports, the testimonies, and even heard the forbidden cylinder played once in the archives of Quito. He remembered the way it had felt rather than sounded, the weight in the air, like sound trying to form inside his chest. He assembled a small team of 4. On August 9th, they reached the hill. The chapel still stood. From a distance, it looked like a ruin. Up close, it looked maintained. The stone was intact, free of moss. The air was unnaturally cold, as if the sun avoided the building. When they entered, their footsteps echoed too slowly, as though the sound took longer than it should to find its way back. Gabriel began measuring the walls. Every dimension was consistent, except one. The interior length was 2 meters longer than the exterior. That was impossible. He found no seams, no hidden doors, no collapsed vaults. Only the altar, cracked and dull beneath layers of dust. Beneath it, faint symbols etched into the floor. Latin words half erased by time. Core, lumen, testis, heart, light, witness. Gabriel brushed the carvings gently with his gloved hand. The dust shimmered. The air changed. A low vibration moved through the floor, subtle but steady, like the murmur of distant thunder. One of his assistants, Maria, staggered backward, clutching her ears. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. No one else did. "It's saying something," she insisted. Gabriel switched on his tape recorder. An old Sony reel, analog, mechanical. The sound barely registered, just static. But the static wasn't random. It pulsed. 3, 2, 3. He felt it in his chest. Then came the voice. Not through the recorder, through the walls. A whisper, layered, almost gentle. "Who remembers the fire?" Maria screamed. The others stumbled toward the door, but the light outside seemed distant now, distorted. The air in the chapel had grown viscous, heavy, filled with invisible pressure. The tape reels spun wildly, clicking back and forth, recording nothing but static. Then the candles on the altar lit themselves. No match, no spark, just ignition. Cold, white fire that burned without consuming. The flames didn't rise, they folded inward, like petals closing. In their glow, Gabriel saw the carvings on the wall reappear. Spirals upon spirals, each pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The light brightened until it became impossible to look. He heard the voice again, closer this time. "The heart remembers its fire. Who will remember yours?" He fell to his knees. The floor beneath him was warm now, breathing softly. He reached toward the altar and touched it. Smooth, cool, unyielding. For a moment, the hum stopped. Then, faintly, through the silence, came another sound. Not the voice, but a whisper of wind, carrying the faintest tone of music. A single, continuous note. He felt tears on his face. He didn't know why. When he blinked, the flames were gone. The air was still. The others stood near the door, pale and trembling. The recorder had stopped, but when he rewound the tape, there was something there. No static, no hum, just breathing. Not one person, dozens, maybe hundreds, all in perfect unison. And beneath that breathing, faint, fragile, like a memory refusing to die, a single phrase in his own voice. "We are the witnesses of fire." He didn't remember saying it. The tape returned to Quito with the team, but only Gabriel listened to it again. The others refused. They said the chapel had followed them back, that they still heard the low hum at night, faint but rhythmic, pulsing through the walls of their hotel rooms. Gabriel dismissed it as nerves. He had his tape, his data, his proof. He sat alone in the archive one night, spooling the reel onto an old deck. The sound of the tape threading through the machine was comforting, familiar, rational. He pressed play. At first, silence, then the same breathing, soft, steady, impossibly human. But now there was something else underneath, a murmur. Dozens of voices whispering at once, indistinct, overlapping. He leaned closer to the speaker. "Core! Lumen!" He slowed the playback. The voices deepened. Words emerged, disjointed but deliberate. "Light within remembers its witness." The air in the archive thickened. The fluorescent lights flickered. He stopped the tape, but the sound continued. The speakers were dead. The machine was off. The reel stopped spinning. And yet, the breathing remained. "Who listens now?" Gabriel froze. The voice was close, right beside him. He turned. The room was empty. On the wall opposite the desk, a faint glow began to form. Not bright, more like phosphorescence, the residue of something once burning. It shaped itself into an outline, a doorway. Through it, faint light pulsed like a heartbeat. He stood, took one step closer. The light grew stronger, filling the edges of the room with color that didn't exist anywhere else. A kind of white that hummed. He reached for the recorder again, his hand trembling. "What are you?" he whispered. The reply came from everywhere at once. Remembrance. The glow expanded, swallowing the wall entirely. Through it, he could see movement, faint silhouettes, kneeling, whispering, their forms shimmering as though submerged in liquid light. They were praying. To what? He couldn't tell. Then one of them turned. It had no face, only radiance where features should have been. But when it moved its head, the light bent, forming the shape of eyes. "You opened the heart," it said. Gabriel stumbled backward, striking the desk. The recorder fell to the floor, still off, still silent. Yet its reels began to turn. The light pulsed once, twice, then darkness. He woke hours later, the room cold, the reels motionless. On the table, a single note written in his own handwriting, though the ink was faintly scorched around the edges. "The light has learned to listen." He didn't remember writing it. When he looked down, his fingertips were dusted with a thin gray powder, limestone residue. The same as the inspector's report from 1938. He sealed the tape, locked it in a vault, and resigned from the project. But weeks later, the head of the institute, Dr. Ramos, received a letter. It was unsigned, typed on a sheet of paper that smelled faintly metallic. The chapel was not built to honor fire. It was built to contain it. Now it listens. The vault was opened. The tape was gone. Only the machine remained, humming faintly, though it wasn't plugged in. When the janitor unplugged the entire room from the main power line, the sound persisted. 3 low pulses, 2 short, 3 again, 3, 2, 3. And beneath that hum, faint and human, came a whisper, Gabriel's voice. "Do you hear it? It's remembering us now." By 1990, the vault's disappearance had already become another quiet secret buried beneath bureaucracy. The ministry sealed the reports, renamed the project, and transferred every surviving artifact to the Department of Seismic Research. A cruel irony, Gabriel would later think, since nothing they studied there ever stayed still. But the hum did. It followed. Technicians began to notice faint interference on seismic sensors, a steady vibration that didn't align with any tectonic pattern. It appeared every Thursday, precisely at noon, the same day and hour Father Salazar used to visit the chapel before it burned. When amplified, the vibration wasn't random. It was harmonic, layered. The pattern, unmistakable. 3, 2, 3. Gabriel, older now, weary and gray, returned quietly to San Erasto one last time. He found the hill unchanged, the air heavy with the same metallic scent, as though no wind had touched the place in decades. The new church stood at the valley's edge, lifeless, the bell long cracked. But the old chapel, the one that shouldn't have existed anymore, still stood. Its door was open. Inside, dust coated the floor in perfect stillness. The altar had collapsed inward, exposing something underneath. A hollow chamber lined with dark stone, faintly glimmering as though wet. He descended slowly, lantern trembling in his hand. At the bottom, a single slab of obsidian lay embedded in the soil. Its surface was smooth, almost reflective. When he held the light close, his reflection blinked half a second late. He crouched beside it, knees trembling. The hum grew louder. "You never stopped," he whispered. The air pulsed. "Neither did you." The voice came not from the chamber, from inside him. His chest vibrated with each syllable. He dropped the lantern. It rolled across the floor, its flame flickering wildly until it died. Darkness swallowed everything, but the glow didn't vanish. The slab beneath him began to shine, faint amber light swirling from its depths like something stirring awake. "You are what it remembers," the voice said, softer now. He pressed his palm against the surface. It was warm. Beneath it, movement. Slow, rhythmic, like breath pushing through stone. A crack appeared. Thin, golden, spreading outward in veins of light. "Please," Gabriel whispered. "What are you?" "The witness," it answered. "The fire that didn't die." The chamber trembled. The light deepened, climbing the walls like veins reconnecting to a heart long dormant. Above him, the ruined chapel began to resonate, faint choral tones vibrating through the air, harmonic and precise. He felt it in his teeth, in his ribs, in his pulse. The light poured from the cracks, rising in columns that met at the ceiling before folding back into themselves, pulsing gently with a single rhythm. 3, 2, 3. Then silence. The light dimmed. The hum faded into a whisper, almost kind. "We remember the ones who listen." Gabriel exhaled slowly. His body was shaking, but his fear was gone. Only reverence remained. He stood, hand trembling over the slab. The air shimmered faintly, showing not his reflection now, but the faint outline of someone kneeling. Salazar, perhaps, or himself. It didn't matter. The figure raised its head. Its eyes were light. Its lips moved silently before dissolving into the glow. Then, the last thing he heard before the lantern reignited by itself, burning white instead of yellow. The chapel never burned. It was remembering how to be fire. When Gabriel emerged from the hill at dawn, the chapel behind him was whole again, its roof restored, its bell gleaming though it had been cracked for decades. He turned back, trembling, and whispered, "Do you hear it?" And from somewhere inside the stone walls, a faint voice answered, "Always." When Gabriel Menendez returned to Quito, he brought nothing with him. No samples, no photos, no recordings. Only silence. He refused interviews, avoided colleagues, and never spoke publicly of San Erasto again. But the silence followed him home. It had changed tone. Neighbors began to hear faint humming through the walls of his apartment. Some thought it was an old refrigerator or faulty wiring. Others swore it came from the walls themselves. The building's caretaker once knocked on his door and claimed he could smell iron and candle wax seeping from beneath it, though Gabriel hadn't lit a candle in years. He stopped sleeping. When he closed his eyes, he heard it, a slow exhale, the sound of something vast and patient. It wasn't in his ears. It was behind them, inside the skull, too deep to reach. He began writing again, not research but confessions, as if the words themselves might dilute the sound. The light was never fire. The fire was memory of the first light. The walls breathe, not metaphorically. They breathe. It's listening even when I don't speak. He filled 12 notebooks that way. then stopped. Because one morning, when he woke, he found the words on the last page written in handwriting that wasn't his. "We remember through you." After that, he left the city. No one knows where he went, though rumors place him back in the Andes, walking alone through the mist, always moving north, as though following a sound only he could hear. Decades passed. The chapel returned to myth, its name removed from official registries, its coordinates scrubbed from government maps. Yet still, travelers spoke of a hill where compasses failed, where echoes came before sound, and where the air shimmered faintly after dusk, as if light were exhaling from the ground. In 2009, a group of documentary students from Quito rediscovered the story while compiling folklore accounts from rural Ecuador. They found an old priest in Riobamba who told them of a chapel that burned without fire and a man who disappeared inside it. The priest gave them a location. They went. The path was steep, half swallowed by vines and silence. The old chapel stood exactly where legend said, untouched by time, its bell gleaming in the gray light of dawn. They set up cameras, microphones, recorders. At first, nothing unusual. Wind, insects, the creak of old wood. Then, as one of them approached the altar, all equipment flickered. Battery readings dropped to 0. The microphones hissed. Then, faintly, a sound. Distant at first, then unmistakable. Singing, low, wordless, ancient. They froze. The audio captured every second. The echo that came before their own voices, the pulse beneath their feet, and the faint scent of iron that filled the air. One of them whispered, "It's not fire." And the recorder, dead seconds before, replied, perfectly clear, "Not yet." Panic broke. They fled down the hill, leaving their equipment behind. The footage, later recovered from the camera, lasted exactly 47 seconds. In the final frame, before the feed cut to static, the chapel walls pulsed once, light swelling from within like the glow of something breathing. When slowed down, the frames revealed faint Latin words etched in the air above the altar. Cor, lumen, testis, heart, light, witness. And between those words, barely visible, stood a figure made of light, kneeling, motionless, head bowed. The timestamp of the footage read, Thursday, 12 p.m. The same hour Salazar had prayed, the same rhythm the mountains still hummed. 3, 2, 3. The footage from 2009 was never released publicly. The students who filmed it refused to talk. 2 left university altogether, 1 joined a seminary, and the last vanished somewhere near Cuenca a year later. But the footage, that 47-second fragment, was archived unofficially in Quito under the label Audio-Visual Anomaly, Andean Region. It sat there, ignored, until 2017. That year, Dr. Helena Ruiz, a physicist specializing in acoustics, stumbled upon the file while researching seismic resonance patterns. She played it once, expecting superstition. At second 12, she leaned closer to the monitor. At second 21, she stopped breathing. The hum wasn't random noise. It was structured, almost linguistic. Every pulse corresponded to a harmonic ratio, 3.2.3, the same impossible pattern that had haunted reports from the 1930s to the 1980s. When she ran it through frequency analysis, the visual spectrum formed an image, not random interference, a shape, the chapel, from above, perfectly detailed, and within it, one glowing point, directly beneath where the altar would have been. She amplified the lower frequencies. The hum deepened. Then came a whisper. We still remember. The monitor flickered. The power in the entire wing of the laboratory dropped for exactly 47 seconds. When lights returned, the file was gone. The server logs showed no deletion, no corruption, only a single replacement entry. Core lumen testis.wave. The file was locked. No one could open it. But the timestamp of its last modification read Thursday, 12 Guangs. Helena tried to shake it off as coincidence. But that night, when she returned home, her phone recorded a message without her pressing any button, 47 seconds long. No voice, no sound, just the faint echo of breath, followed by a tone too low to hear, but strong enough to make the microphone membrane vibrate audibly. She played it through studio monitors, slowing the playback. At 1/4 speed, the pattern shifted into discernible sound. Human voices, hundreds of them, whispering the same 3 words. The light listens. She deleted it. But the next morning, it was back, copied into every device she owned, each version slightly longer than the last. By the third day, it lasted 3 minutes. By the seventh, 7. Each time it ended, there was a new sound near the final seconds. A heartbeat. Then, after the final pulse, a man's voice, deep and calm. "You've opened it again." She drove to San Erasto the following week. The villagers still refused to go near the hill. The path was overgrown, the air unnaturally still. As she approached, her phone vibrated. The same 47-second file playing by itself. Screen dark, battery supposedly dead. The chapel waited above, identical to the 1938 sketches. No damage, no weathering, no dust. Helena stepped inside. The air changed immediately. Denser, heavier, filled with a hum so low it could only be felt through bone. The altar had been restored, pristine. The carvings glimmered faintly. She placed her hand on it. The hum stopped. Then softly, from the walls. "We missed the fire." She staggered back, heart pounding. The voice wasn't threatening. It sounded mournful. The air flickered once, and the faint scent of iron filled the room. Light began to bleed from the cracks in the floor, rising slowly, swirling upward. Inside the light, faint silhouettes, kneeling forms, hundreds of them, heads bowed in prayer. Their faces were featureless, but their bodies pulsed gently in rhythm, alive yet motionless. Helena tried to run, but before she reached the door, a whisper stopped her. "Stay." She turned. The figures had lifted their heads. "Listen." And then the sound returned. Not a hum, not music, but breath, vast and synchronized, expanding and contracting in perfect rhythm. The light filled everything. She closed her eyes. The last thing she heard before losing consciousness was her own voice, layered with hundreds of others. Core, lumen, testis. When she woke, it was night. The chapel was dark, empty. Her phone was gone. The only thing left was the faint warmth on the altar stone, as though something had just exhaled. When Dr. Helena Ruiz returned to Quito, she could not remember the drive. She found her car parked neatly in the Institute's underground lot, keys still in the ignition, headlights off, and 47 new voicemails on her phone. Each was the same length, 47 seconds. She never pressed play. Instead, she transferred the recordings to an isolated hard drive, labeled it San Erasto Data, and sealed it in a soundproof cabinet. Then she requested extended leave and disappeared from academic contact for months. But the data did not stay silent. On the third night, a security guard reported hearing voices from the lab's server room, faint, overlapping, like an old radio picking up multiple stations. When he entered, the lights were dim, the air cold, and the speakers of every idle computer emitted a synchronized hum. 3, 2, 3. The guard swore that when he approached one of the monitors, the static formed words across the screen. "We remember the ones who listened." He unplugged the machines. The words remained. The servers crashed the following morning. Every storage unit had been overwritten with a single file name repeated endlessly. Core Lumen Testis. The files contained no audio, only blank waveforms stretching for 47 seconds each. But when opened, even in silence, the air around the listener changed. Vibrations, imperceptible but real, caused faint rattling in glass panes and light fixtures. And then came the smell. Iron, rain, stone, the scent of San Erasto. Months later, a new report surfaced. Not from scientists, but from villagers again. They said the chapel was singing. At first, no one believed it. Then hikers began recording faint chorales from the surrounding hills. Low, harmonic tones that moved like wind. It wasn't melody, but intention, rising and falling with the cadence of a living thing. The recordings, when analyzed, showed an impossible trait. The sound wasn't radiating from the chapel. It was converging toward it, as though the mountains themselves were inhaling. Helena returned once more, alone, in late 2018. Her journal, found later in her apartment, describes the final journey in clinical detail. She wrote about the same metallic scent, the unnatural cold, the sense that the air was thicker the higher she climbed. But as she approached the hill, she began to hear something new. Her name, whispered softly, buried inside the wind. Helena. Then again, fainter, from beneath the ground. Helena. When she reached the entrance, the chapel's door was gone. In its place stood an archway of pure black stone, veined faintly with light. It pulsed, slow, alive, breathing. She wrote, "It's open." Her last entry ends abruptly. The final line trails off mid-sentence, the ink scorched into the page as though burned from beneath. The fire wasn't destruction. It was. The rescue team arrived 4 days later. Inside the chapel, everything was frozen in a thin film of glassy residue, smooth as obsidian. Her notebook lay beside the altar, its pages warm. They found no trace of her body, but her voice remained. When the team reviewed the audio from their body cameras, her voice emerged faintly beneath the static, whispering just before the footage ended. "Listen." Then, softer. "You can hear it breathing." After that, nothing. The recording lasted exactly 47 seconds. At the final second, every device failed simultaneously. Batteries drained, clocks froze, sound cut off. When power returned, all the audio files had changed. Each began with a heartbeat. Each ended with a phrase that wasn't hers. "We are the memory of fire." And buried beneath that voice, almost imperceptible, another whisper. This one delicate, human, sorrowful. "Do you remember us now?" The recordings stopped circulating after 2019. By then, the chapel had vanished from satellite imagery, replaced by an expanse of unbroken rock. No road led there anymore. No map bore its name. San Erasto existed only in fading memories and half-buried stories told by those who never dared to climb the hill again. But something remained. Across Ecuador, reports began to surface. Small, scattered, unconnected at first. A teacher in Ambato swore her classroom walls pulsed softly whenever she spoke of faith. A miner near Riobamba claimed the tunnels sang when the lights went out, low and harmonic, like the drone of distant bells. A nun in Cuenca described the smell of iron and rain drifting through the convent every Thursday at noon. Always the same day, always the same rhythm. 3, 2, 3. The government dismissed the incidents as folklore, auditory pareidolia, but the data told another story. Seismic readings across the Andes began showing faint, synchronized pulses, tiny vibrations, repeating every 47 seconds, moving not across the ground but through it. The pattern matched the chapel's recordings. And though no one said it aloud, the implication was clear. Whatever had breathed beneath that stone in 1938 was still breathing. In 2021, the Ministry of Culture authorized one last expedition. Not to San Erasto, it no longer existed, but to a nearby cave system believed to be connected to the same geological fault. The lead researcher was a linguist, Dr. Emilio Paredes, a distant relative of the night guard who once heard voices through the archive walls. He carried a single objective: record the hum, translate it, prove it was mere resonance. They descended at dawn. The walls were warm to the touch. Every microphone picked up the same low tone, perfectly steady, impossibly organic. When amplified, it formed syllables, each one resonant with human breath. The linguist froze. The words weren't Latin, but they carried structure, rhythm, syntax. He realized the sound wasn't just vibration, it was speech slowed by centuries. He adjusted the playback. At normal speed, the hum became whisper. At higher speed, whisper became chorus. At perfect pitch, the words emerged. "We are the light that remembered fire. We are the heart that listens. You are the echo that answered." The air inside the cave grew warmer, denser. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsing in time with the hum. Then, a voice separated itself from the chorus. Clear, human, familiar. "Helena." Dr. Paredes dropped the microphone. The others turned to him, wide-eyed. The voice was unmistakable. "You opened it again," it said. The rock behind the altar-like formation cracked, releasing a burst of white light so bright it erased the edges of the cave. Inside that light, silhouettes appeared, figures kneeling, praying, motionless, each one glowing from within. For a moment, it looked like a chapel. Then the light folded inward, collapsing to a single, pulsing heartbeat. 3, 2, 3, and everything went silent. When the team returned to the surface, all recordings were blank, except one. The final file, Sanarasto Heart WAV, contained 47 seconds of faint static. At second 46, a woman's voice whispered softly, clearly, "We are listening still." Then a breath, and then a tone, low, endless. The same impossible frequency that had lived through wax, tape, stone, and silence. It spread quietly through the monitoring systems across South America, invisible but present, resonating with mountains, towers, oceans. The range exhaled once. Every seismograph flickered, and for a single instant, barely measurable but undeniably real, the Andes sang, not fire, not destruction, memory, a hymn of light remembering how to breathe. When it faded, the readings returned to normal, but anyone who listened that night swore the silence afterward felt alive, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for someone to answer.